Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I gotta tell you, I am incredibly excited about this one. We're going to explore a brilliantly fascinating story today. It's a narrative that kind of feels like a whimsical fairy tale, but it actually packs a really profound philosophical punch about power, responsibility, and the environment. Our story is called The Golden Pencil of Creation, and we'll be tracking the journey of a tiny, fiercely curious stick figure named Pip. So let's dive right in because this is a journey you absolutely will not want to miss. Have you ever wondered what would happen if everything you drew suddenly became real? Seriously, just project yourself into that thought experiment for a moment. Imagine having the ultimate creative power literally right at your fingertips. You scribble a slice of pizza on a napkin, and boom, it's hot and ready to eat. You draw a stack of $100 bills, and well, there they are. It's the ultimate fantasy, right? Today's explainer walks us through exactly what happens when our tiny hero, Pip, is suddenly handed this exact, unbelievable power. Section 1. The Curious Stick Figure and Discovering the Magic. Our story begins with Pip, a fiercely curious explorer in a little red scarf, who, while wandering through the forest, stumbles upon a strange, glowing golden pencil sparkling with tiny stars under a tree root. Naturally, he decides to test it out on a flat stone. Now, what's really interesting about this part of the story is how fast things escalate. At just 5 seconds in, Pip draws a simple apple. The drawing isn't perfect by any means, but he waits 5 seconds. Suddenly, a real shiny red apple appears right beside him. Pip blinks, he looks at the drawing, he looks at the real apple, and he just laughs with pure excitement. Could this actually be happening? So he decides to try again, this time drawing a tiny frog. Another 5 seconds passed, and a cheerful little frog hops right across the grass. Now he knows for sure this pencil is pure magic. Just 15 seconds into his little experiment, he's drawing floating balloons and dancing butterflies. Every single drawing becomes vividly, undeniably real. The animals in the forest gather around him, absolutely amazed. Pip feels like the greatest artist in the whole world. Pop! That's the sound, the undeniable auditory cue of creation. Every time Pip finished a sketch, 5 seconds would tick by, and then pop! Magic burst into reality. It was intoxicating. But as with all great power, that initial wonder soon gives way to a much, much more complicated reality. Section 2. Too much of everything, or the escalation of excess. Looking at his tiny creations, a wild idea popped into Pip's head. He thought, if I can draw anything, why stop with little things? Suddenly, the pace of his drawing dramatically shifted. It was overwhelming. He drew literal mountains of ice cream, giant cakes covered in colorful frosting, hundreds of toys, bicycles and kites, boxes completely filled to the brim with candy. He was basically throwing the ultimate party for the forest. And at first, everyone celebrated. The animals eagerly tasted the ice cream, the birds bounced joyfully on the balloons, and it seemed like the greatest day in the history of the forest. But Pip didn't stop there. Pop, another mountain of ice cream. Pop, more bicycles. Pop, pop, pop. Every 5 seconds, new things were appearing everywhere. The momentum was rapid, overwhelming, and completely out of control. The magic was literally overtaking the natural environment. What started as a fun magic trick was rapidly turning into an avalanche of excess. All that joyous creation very quickly morphed into an ecological disaster. Think about it. Those giant, delicious cakes, well, they were so big they completely blocked the forest paths, trapping the animals. The hundreds of colorful balloons drifted up and became hopelessly tangled in the branches, leaving the birds with absolutely nowhere to land. And those endless boxes of candy, they completely filled the vital tiny streams with sugar and wrappers. The squirrels couldn't even reach their homes. Pip looked around, and his heart just sank. The beautiful, peaceful forest had become dangerously crowded. Section 3. A Lesson in Responsibility. The Turning Point. Pip stopped drawing. The joyful laughter ceased, replaced by the worried little voices of confused animals. Pip finally realized his unchecked ambition had broken the very place he loved. Then, a tiny rabbit quietly walked over to Pip. The rabbit didn't look angry, it simply looked sad. And it softly whispered this profound thought. Sometimes having everything leaves no room for what truly matters. I'm actually going to say that again because it's the anchor of this entire explainer. Sometimes having everything leaves no room for what truly matters. Pip stood very still. For the first time that day, the excitement was completely gone, replaced by a heavy, deep sense of responsibility. He realized the magical pencil wasn't the problem. The pencil was just a tool. The real problem was how he had chosen to use it. And this brilliantly illustrates how Pip shifted his mindset entirely. Instead of drawing for his own want, driven by greed for ice cream and toys, he realized he needed to draw for need. He decided to use this immense power to provide clean rivers, birdhouses, and squirrel bridges. He decided to act not just for himself, but for his community. Section 4. The Restoration, Fixing the Forest. Pip knew he couldn't just leave this mess. Taking the golden pencil, he sketched enormous, glowing, friendly helping hands. 5 seconds later, pop! What followed was a beautifully orderly cleanup procedure. The glowing hands gently picked up every scattered toy. Then, they carefully stacked every giant cake so the paths were clear again. They delicately untangled every single balloon from the branches, and finally, gathered every piece of candy blocking the streams. And what's really beautiful about this is that nothing was thrown away. Everything was organized, preserved, and prepared to be shared fairly among all the animals. The peace of the forest was restored. But Pip wasn't completely finished. He picked up the magical pencil one last time to draw for need instead of want. And his final, selfless creations were breathtaking. He drew new trees and bright flowers. He drew clean, flowing rivers. He sketched safe birdhouses, cozy rabbit burrows, intricate squirrel bridges, and lush butterfly gardens. Each drawing appeared with a soft, magical sparkle rather than a chaotic pop. The forest slowly transformed into the most spectacular, beautiful place Pip had ever laid eyes on. Pip looked down at the golden pencil in his hand. He finally understood its greatest secret, the true definition of magic. True magic isn't about creating everything you want. It is about creating something that makes the world better. Having learned this invaluable lesson, Pip did something incredible. Very gently, he walked back to the old tree roots where he had found the pencil, and he placed it right back on the ground. As he walked away, the pencil quietly disappeared into the roots, almost as if it were hiding, waiting for the next kind-hearted explorer. Our final section today, the next adventure, a new explorer. Because as Pip walked away, a playful little squirrel scampered down the tree and spotted that very same glowing golden pencil among the leaves. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought. What would happen next? I mean, if a squirrel had the ultimate power of creation, what would it draw? Mountains of acorns? Infinite towering trees? And what would it learn about responsibility in the process? That, my friends, is another adventure for another day. But the big takeaway for us right now from Pip's journey is to remember that every little problem hides a big adventure, and the tools we have are only ever as good as the intentions behind them. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep exploring, stay curious, and I'll catch you next time.